Hello, welcome to the Wire Podcast, a podcast that provides the best content about all things sports. I'm Ryan McCrary, and today we're going to talk all about the 2024 NFL Combine, which was held this past weekend. We're going to talk about guys who did well during the drills, some guys who didn't do so well, and we'll also talk about all of the stuff that happened with Caleb Williams, with him electing not to do any of the drills, not to throw at all, but more importantly, deciding not to share his medicals with all 32 NFL teams. We'll also talk about the latest rumors surrounding Justin Fields and whether or not the Chicago Bears will trade him. And we'll also talk about the Atlanta Falcons and who they will target to be their quarterback next season. There were a lot of rumors surrounding this during the week of the Combine, so we're going to talk about all of this. We've got a lot to talk about today. I hope you're excited. I know I am. Let's not waste any more time and dive right in. Alright, let's get this show started by talking about some of the non-athletic testing related stuff that happened during the week of the NFL Combine. I want to start by talking about Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams, he elected to do none of the drills and also to not throw. This isn't surprising. I heard a lot of people criticizing him for this decision on social media, but that's pretty normal. That's not something that's odd for, one of the top quarterback prospects who's, expected to be the number one overall pick. For him to do that, that's really not shocking. So I thought that was not controversial whatsoever. But probably the biggest story was his decision to not share his medical information with all 32 teams. Someone wrote an article about this, reporting on this situation like the first or second day of the Combine, maybe even the third day on like Saturday. But basically someone wrote a reporter, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he outlined his decision to do this, Caleb Williams' decision to do this, and why he did it. And basically, Caleb Williams is not sharing his medical information with every team in the NFL, but he said himself, and I think he even said this at the podium during his press conference at the Combine, he said that he will be sharing this information with the teams that he meets with in person. So, some NFL teams will be getting this information, they will be getting his medicals, but not all teams will be doing that. And a lot of people were being very critical of him for this decision, saying he's putting himself above the process. I completely disagree with that opinion, with that viewpoint. I think he is in a really rare position where he has a lot of control. Caleb Williams has a lot of leverage. He is, to some people, a generational prospect. He is the number one pick in this year's draft. He's gonna be the number one overall pick. And he's everyone loves him. Everyone loves him. Everyone has nothing but great things to say about him. And when I say everyone, I mean generally people who are around him, his teammates, his coaches, but also evaluators generally have a lot of great things to say about him, and people who have talked to him have a lot of great things to say about him. So he's in a very rare position where he has a lot of control, a lot of leverage. And in that article that I brought up, something that was mentioned was that a lot of players over the years have complained about the process of doing medicals for teams. Players have complained that it just takes a long time, that they're asked a lot of personal and uncomfortable questions. And someone, I don't remember who, mentioned that a lot of players have thanked Caleb Williams for doing this, for kind of taking things into his own hands, kind of making a decision that will potentially help a lot of players who go to the Combine years down the road. And so I didn't think this was a very controversial story. I thought it was a non-story, honestly, and I think it makes a lot of sense for Caleb Williams to do this. It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to give his medical information to every team, especially to teams who have no chance of drafting him and who aren't interested in drafting him at all, because some team will likely start leaking stuff from his medicals, even if it's like the smallest thing or things that aren't true, teams are going to start leaking information to kind of lower his draft stock a little bit, try to do whatever they can. And even, like, some teams may use that information years from now if he ever becomes available in a trade, or if he's a free agent or whatever. So I think it makes a lot of sense for him to not share this medical information with every team, but only the teams that he will meet with in person. Another thing I want to mention, Bears fans. There are a lot of Bears fans on social media who are the most annoying people on the planet. And it's not all Bears fans. There are some Bears fans that I have seen on social media who are great, who are amazing football people, who are awesome, who have done great work during the NFL draft process, who are smart people, who I enjoy interacting with on Twitter, and things like that. But there are also a lot of Bears fans who are just insufferable, who have a chance to get a really great quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams, and they don't like him. And they love Justin Fields. And I get that. I get supporting Justin Fields. He's a part of your team. You should support him. But some people go way overboard with their support of Justin Fields, and they go as far as, like, hating Caleb Williams and doing whatever they can to tear Caleb Williams down. And I've seen some Bears fans legit make stuff up about Caleb. Like, there were some Bears fans that were killing Caleb for not doing any of the drills, not throwing at the combine, and then not giving his medical information to all 32 teams. But then there were crickets when Marvin Harrison Jr. was late to a press conference, didn't do drills either. And listen, Caleb is not the only quarterback in this draft to not throw, to not take part in drills. Both Drake May and Jaden Daniels didn't do that stuff either. Did you hear Bears fans complaining about that? No. So a lot of Bears fans it annoys me, and I'm not even a Bears fan. I'm a Falcons fan. But Elon Musk's algorithm on Twitter knows what's going to piss me off. And when I see Bears fans being just absolutely stupid on Twitter and like doing whatever they can to bash Caleb Williams, even if the information they have is like false, or even if they're just like making stuff up and spreading misinformation, it's crazy. It is insane. And the lengths they will go to defend the quarterback in Justin Fields, who isn't amazing, is wild. And I don't say that to be disrespectful of Justin Fields. He seems to be a great guy. He's a solid player. Like, he's not awful, but he's not amazing. He's not like a top 12 quarterback. He's not a franchise guy yet. And so the Bears are in this unique position to get a really strong quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams, a guy who I believe is one of the better quarterback prospects we've seen in recent memory. Like, I think he might be a better prospect than Trevor Lawrence. Like, he is special, and it just drives me crazy seeing the way that some Bears fans treat him. It's crazy. I'm going to stop ranting, but that stuff it drives me crazy, and it was really rampant during the week of the Combine, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I also wanted to talk about the trade rumors surrounding Justin Fields. There were a lot of rumors about a potential Justin Fields trade this week at the Combine. It does sound like the Bears are going to be keeping the number 1 overall pick, and they are going to select Caleb Williams, which is no surprise. There are some Bears fans that will try to convince you that the Bears are going to trade the pick and will keep Justin Fields. No, they're not. Like, there's literally a 0% chance it's happening. Like, there's no way. They are not doing that. I saw a report today that the Bears were trying to bring Caleb Williams in on a visit, like, this week, which isn't normal. Usually you wait until, I believe someone said that usually teams will wait until the end of the month after pro days are over, to do like a top 30 visit with prospects. And they were trying to do that immediately after the Combine. They're taking Caleb Williams, and they're probably going to trade Justin Fields. Now, where is Fields going to be traded to? There are a lot of teams, or like not a lot, but there are a handful of teams that have been connected to Justin Fields. This includes the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Steelers. There might be more. Actually, also, I heard the Vikings. I heard that team brought up a little bit. So you have a handful of teams that have been connected to Justin Fields as possible trade candidates. I know the Atlanta Falcons were heavily connected to Justin Fields at one point. That kind of buzz seems to have died down a little bit. It seems more likely that the Falcons will target Kirk Cousins, and we'll get into that a little bit more later on in this episode. I know the Raiders have been connected a little bit, the Vikings as well, and the Steelers. Right now, it seems like the Steelers are most likely to trade for him, but there have also been reports that the Steelers want to build around Kenny Pickett, so I just don't know. And there were reports last week that the market for Justin Fields is almost non-existent, that not a lot of teams are interested in trading for him at the moment. And it sounds like if the Bears do trade Fields right now, they may not get nearly as much as they want in return for him. I know at one point there was a possibility that, it was rumored that there was a possibility that the Bears could get a late first round pick for Fields. And if not, they would get at least a second round pick. And now the rumor is maybe they get just a third round pick in return for Fields. So those are kind of the trade rumors with Justin Fields. I think the Bears want to trade him as soon as possible, but they also want to get a good return for him. I'm not sure if that's possible. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get more than a third round pick at this point with the way, considering it sounds like not a lot of teams are interested in trading for Fields. So who knows? Right now it's all rumors. It's all speculation. We don't know really anything about the situation. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out, but that's pretty much a breakdown of the latest Justin Fields trade rumors. Before we move on to the next topic, I want to talk about the Atlanta Falcons and who they're going to target at quarterback. I mentioned how they have been connected to Justin Fields. I don't think the Falcons are going to trade for Fields now. I mentioned a second ago that it does sound like they are going to be heavily invested in trying to get Kirk Cousins in free agency. In my opinion, that would be a decent deal. I think that would be a solid decision. Kirk Cousins is a really good quarterback. He is older. He is like 36 years old, coming off an Achilles injury, and because of that, there's some risk involved there. But I don't think we would have to give him a huge contract that ties us to him for like a super long time. I think if we did sign Kirk Cousins, it would be either a 2 or 3 year deal. Probably more than likely a 3-year deal. I don't think the contract would be any longer than that. And I think we would have to pay him around $40 to $45 million a year. And I think the reason why the Falcons would be interested in Kirk Cousins is he's a really good quarterback. I know last year he tore his Achilles in the middle of the year, but when he was on the field, he was incredible. Like, he was playing like a top 5, borderline top 5 quarterback last year. He was playing extremely well. He was awesome. He's really good. And the Falcons seem to want to win now. And Kirk Cousins, if he is healthy, will help us do that. Now, in my opinion, I think this could be a short-sighted move because I just think, what is our ceiling with Kirk Cousins as our quarterback? Will we win our division? Will we win the NFC South? Yeah, probably. But how far can we go in the playoffs? Can we make the NFC Championship? Can we make the Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins? In my opinion, I'm just not sure. I'm not confident that we would be able to do that. And so because of that, I'm just not sure I would want to tie ourselves to Kirk Cousins for a few years, even if it isn't a super long-term deal. But those are my thoughts on the situation. I understand why we're interested, and I do think that having Kirk Cousins as our quarterback makes us a lot better, especially on offense. And I think that if we sign Kirk Cousins, it will be fun to watch the Falcons. And it really hasn't been fun to watch the Falcons for a few years now. And so I would be okay with us signing Kirk Cousins. I just think that signing Kirk Cousins keeps us from being able to make a better, smarter, long-term deal at the quarterback position within the next 2 years. And so, in my opinion, I would probably prefer us not go after Kirk Cousins. I don't really want us to go after Justin Fields either. I would love it if we could trade up in the draft for like a Drake May. Not really Jaden Daniels. I wouldn't be interested in trading up for him, but I would be interested in trading up for Drake May. Of course, I'm not sure if that's a realistic possibility, but those are my thoughts on what the Falcons are going to do at quarterback in the latest rumors surrounding our quarterback situation. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what the Falcons do there at quarterback. I do understand one last thing I wanted to mention with this situation. I do understand that our GM, our coaching staff, they're in a unique position, especially with our GM. I don't think that he has the longest leash. I don't think he would be able to roll with like Desmond Ridder for another year, or maybe even another cheap veteran. I think he will be pressured by our owner, Arthur Blank, to make a big move now. Because honestly, as a fan, I would be okay if we started Desmond Ridder another year, or if we went after a cheap veteran to be our starting quarterback, just as a stopgap before we made a big move in like a year or two for a high-end quarterback prospect, or another veteran quarterback who is like as good as Kirk Cousins, maybe even a little bit better, who's also younger and doesn't have an injury history. But who knows? I know that's it's a hard decision, and there's a lot on our front office's plate there with the quarterback situation. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on that situation, and those are my thoughts and my breakdown on all the non-athletic testing related things that went on during the week of the Combine. Next up, we're going to talk about the winners of the Combine and a lot of players who did well during the drills. Before we do that, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back in just a second. Alright, I am back. Now we can talk about a lot of players who performed well at this year's Combine, and I've got a lot of players I want to talk about. This may end up being a pretty long episode, who knows, but I got a lot of players I want to talk about. I'll go through their numbers and all the drills that they participated in. So let's start out with the offense, and let's start out with a few running backs that did well. I want to talk about Trey Benson. He's a running back for Florida State, had a couple of strong seasons there. At the Combine, he measured in 6 feet tall, 216 pounds, had a 33.5-inch vertical according to Relative Athletic Score. If you don't know what Relative Athletic Score is, it is a website created by a guy named Kentley Platt on Twitter. He has all the Combine measurements for every player, going back to like the 80s. So it's a great website, a great tool, and he has an RAS score, a Relative Athletic Score for every player, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the best. And Trey Benson had a RAS of 9.77. I don't know if the vertical is correct. A 33.5-inch vertical is low, and it's an outlier for his profile, so that might be an incorrect measurement. But Benson had a 10-foot 2-inch broad jump, a 4.39 40, a 2.56 unofficial 20-yard split, and a 1.52 unofficial 10-yard split. Those speed times are really good. The broad jump is good as well. Not elite, but it's still very good. And he's got decent size for a running back. Really strong combine performance from him. And based on his athletic testing, his production, he might end up being the RB1 in this year's draft. Another running back I wanted to talk about is Isaac Guerrero from Louisville. He just demolished the Combine. Measured in at 6 feet tall, 221 pounds, so he's a bigger running back. But then he had like unbelievable testing numbers. A 41.5-inch vertical, which is 99th percentile. A 10.9 broad jump, which is 97th percentile. A 4.33 40-yard dash, which is 99th percentile. A 2.52 unofficial 20-yard split, 98th percentile. And a 1.51 10-yard split, which is 97th percentile. Really good numbers across the board. Also had an RAS of 9.99, the second best RAS score of all time. And that's going back to 1987. A terrific performance from him. Now, I read this morning, and I didn't have this guy's profile up. I read this morning that Blake Corum had a good performance, and I actually didn't look up his numbers, so I'm going to look those up right now. Should be able to find these pretty easily. So, Blake Corum, I'm going to look at his numbers. So, he actually didn't have an elite performance all around. He's a bit shorter, measured in at a little under 5'8", 205 pounds. Did have 27 reps on the bench, which is really nice. Had a 35.5-inch vertical, which is solid. Ran a 4.53 in the 40, which is solid. Not great for his size, but still a solid number. A 2.64 unofficial 20-yard split. And 1.58 10-yard split, which both of those numbers are solid. Not great, but solid. But what's great about his profile is the agility drills. He had a 4.12 shuttle, which is around the 91st percentile, and a 6.82 3-cone, which is 95th percentile. So he came in a little bit short, a little bit small, but was really good in terms of agility. Not a great all-around profile. Had a 8.48 RAS. Like, not a spectacular combine performance, but a very solid performance overall, and a great performance in terms of the agility drills. Alright, let's move on and talk about one tight end, and that is Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. He had a really strong all-around performance. Isn't the biggest tight end, measured at 6'4", 250, which is actually just around average for a tight end. But he had really strong numbers across the board. A 40-inch vertical, a 10.6 broad jump. Both of those numbers are well above average. Both of those numbers are elite. He also had a let me see, I'm having a hard time reading that number. A 4.68 40, a 2.72 20-yard split, and a 1.59 10-yard split. That 40 is around the 84th percentile, and that 10-yard split is around the 93rd percentile. He also had really good agility numbers. Had a 4.23 shuttle and a 6.82 3-cone. That shuttle is around the 88th percentile, and that 3-cone is around the 98th percentile. He also had a RAS of 9.75, which is really good. You like to see that. He might end up being the tight end 2 in this class behind Brock Bowers. He had a really nice performance there. Now we can talk about the wide receivers. And there were a lot of wide receivers that performed well at this year's Combine. Starting off with the man, the myth, the legend, Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy had a terrific performance. He did measure in really small. He's 5'11", 165 pounds. That's tiny, especially that weight. That weight is really small. Unfortunately, guys that weigh this little don't have a good hit rate historically, so that's a concern, but he was a freak athlete at the Combine. Had a 41-inch vertical, a 10.11 broad jump. That vertical is 98th percentile. That broad jump is around 97th percentile. Then he had a 4.21 40-yard dash official. That's the best 40 time ever. That was awesome to see. He really killed it at the 40. He also had a 20-yard split of 2.48, which is 99th percentile, and a 10-yard split of 1.5, which is 97th percentile. And overall, he had a RAS of 9.37. That would be higher if he were bigger, but he's very small, so that dragged down his RAS a little bit. But he's explosive, he's fast, and that gave him a really strong RAS. And a lot of people have said that he had very impressive production in college. I haven't looked at his production yet, haven't really gotten to that yet, but he had a very strong production profile, and I can't wait to dive into his numbers. I did watch him the other day, and I was impressed by what I saw, but I want to dive into the numbers a little bit and see how his size affects his overall profile. I did want to talk about another Texas receiver, and that is Adonai Mitchell, aka A.D. Mitchell, played at Georgia and Texas. He's 6'2", 205, very good size for a receiver. He had a 39.5-inch vertical, which is around the 95th percentile, and a 11.4 broad jump, which is nuts, and that is in the 99th percentile. He also had a 4.35 40, which is 98th percentile, a 2.55 20-yard split, which is 92nd percentile, and a 1.54 10-yard split, which is 87th percentile. And overall, he had a RES score of 997, which is absolutely terrific. I know that Mitchell's production profile isn't great, and there are a lot of concerns there, but I watched him after the combine, and I was impressed by what I saw. I loved his fluidity and his size, and I understood why a lot of people loved him, but you always have to be concerned when a guy's production profile is as bad as AD Mitchell's is, but I'll dive into that a little bit more as we get closer to the draft and see whether or not we can overlook that, but for now, Mitchell, combine performance was spectacular. It was very impressive. The next receiver I wanted to talk about is Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, measured in at around 6'3", 209 pounds, had a 38.5-inch vertical, which is 90th percentile, and had a broad jump of 10.6, which is 87th percentile speed. He had a 4.61 40-yard dash, which is in the 35th percentile, a 2.68 20-yard split, which is in the 33rd percentile, and a 1.61 10-yard split, which is in the 40th percentile, for an RES score of 512. Now, Kalen King had a really down year at Penn State this past season. Now he comes in and he's pretty slow in all areas at the combine. That's unfortunate. I think his draft stock is going to go down a lot. I know he had a good season in 2022, but after having a rough final season at Penn State and now coming in really slow at the combine without being huge for the position, that's unfortunate. Maybe he'll run again at his pro day and have a better time, but those numbers were not great, and so I think Kalen King's stock is going to drop a lot post-combine. Another guy I wanted to mention, and like I said earlier, there weren't a lot of guys who tested poorly at the combine. That's mainly because a lot of guys are opting out. That's more common now. You see a lot of guys opting out of the combine. And the last guy I wanted to mention, someone who didn't have great testing numbers, was Spencer Rattler, quarterback from South Carolina. I do want to mention that athletic testing numbers aren't as important for quarterbacks. They do matter to some degree. Like a lot of guys who were raw in terms of their production in college, but were freak athletes, and had like big arms, they went on to be better in the NFL. That guys that fit that mold are like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. And I know Lamar Jackson didn't test at the combine, but he was a freak athlete that showed up on film. And so, with Spencer Rattler, he measured in at 6 feet tall, 211 pounds, which is a little bit small for a quarterback. Not like abnormally small, just a little bit small. He's not a big quarterback. He also had a 32-inch vertical, which is 68th percentile. That's good. But a 9-foot broad jump, which is 41st percentile. He then had a 4.96 40-yard dash, which is 30th percentile. A 2.85 20-yard split, which is 38th percentile. And a 1.71 10-yard split, which is 42nd percentile. For an RES score of 258. And a lot of people I saw some people on Twitter talking about how he looked really good in the on-field drills, which is great to see. And I know a lot of people have been watching his film, and have liked what they've seen. But just in terms of the combine performance, he was a guy that I thought stuck out in terms of having just an underwhelming combine performance by the testing numbers alone. So, like I said, there were a lot of guys who had a poor combine performance. Before we get out of here, I do want to mention some guys that I didn't talk about here who had like historically great combine numbers. One, Theo Johnson, tight end from Penn State, who had an RES of 9.99. Brandon Coleman, a guard from TCU, who had a RES of 9.98. Tanner Bortolini from a guard from Wisconsin, who had an RES score of 9.97. Miles Cole, a defensive end from Texas Tech, who had an RES score of 9.96. And then Frank Crum, a tackle from Wyoming, who had an RES score of 9.95. Well, that wraps up everything I wanted to talk about in regards to this year's Combine. it was an awesome combine. I had a lot of fun watching it, a lot of fun covering it. But yeah, those are all of the non-athletic testing related topics. Those were guys who performed really well at the combine on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. And then some guys who had underwhelming performances in terms of athletic testing. But that's all I've got for today's episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. And I will see y'all next time. Peace.